you saw the very best players the entire country has to offer, and you saw it throughout the course of the weekend.
He's growing, he's improving at such a rapid rate. He's going to be a very good player.
This guy's a cross between Sean Marion and Lamar Odom. He's a 6'8" lefty, a high-level athlete, but also got a little bit of point-forward skills in him as he can handle and pass the ball extremely well. At this point, they are simply the standard by which everyone else is judged in prep school basketball. He's considering the likes of Michigan, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas.
Welcome back to the Upside Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Finkelstein, and this is the first audio and digital version of the podcast as we're coming to you both in our regular phone version if you're listening over iTunes or SoundCloud, as well as online here. And with me is ESPN National Director of Recruiting, Paul Biancardi. So, Coach, thanks for joining me.
Nothing else I'd rather do on a Friday afternoon, Adam, than talk ball with you.
So we are both in our respective offices here. My hair looks awful. Your hair still looks good. So we're not really sure how that's happening, but
I work on it every day.
It's phenomenal. So we've got our final ESPN 100 for the class of 2020 getting ready to come out next week. And the big story in my mind for 2020 has always been the top three players of the class. And so obviously you've got Kade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Jalen Green. Different people could have them in whatever order they want, but to me, they are really separate themselves from the rest of the class. Are we in agreement on that?
No doubt about it. I'll tell you what, though, Scotty Barnes made a late charge in this class, in my mind. In a lot of ways, he could be the number 2, 3 player in a lot of classes. There's just no room in this class. You mentioned Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, Kade Cunningham. Those guys are number 1 players in most classes.
Right.
Because they're together. We're trying to separate them and by different categories and different criteria. And it's difficult because I'm sure that a lot of people, if you poll 10 people, you probably would have at least 5 to 6 different answers on who number 1 is.
And, you know, what people may not realize is that discussion between those 3 guys, that has been an ongoing discussion amongst our ESPN group for weeks now as we've approached this final deadline. I mean, it's not like this was an easy or unanimous decision how we rank these guys because we're considering so many different factors. Do you want to talk about how the criteria that we go in and really analyze the 4 Ps, I believe you call it, the way we break down these guys?
Sure. And thinking about past classes, and remind me if this is not accurate, but when DeAndre Ayton, Marvin Bagley, and Michael Porter, right, they're in the same class, that was difficult to figure out who. This is similar to those 3 guys. I haven't seen a class like this at the top since 2017. Well, the formula for number 1 and for all the players is you look at their performances. We try to track as best as we can, either live or scouting or through the internet, great dominating performances. And it's better when you're there live because you can see how the points are scored. You can see how the player can impact the game without scoring the basketball. But certainly film does a lot of good justice. So I think you calculate and you look at the performances because that really tells you the talent, the ability, the giftedness of the player and where they can influence the game in the future. It's like being on stage for a performance. You see somebody really talented one time, you want to see them again. So I think that's the first step is the performance. Second step is production. Once you see a player performing well, now you're looking for productivity. Reggie Rankin, who was in our ESPN group, always quoted Aristotle by saying, "You are what you repeatedly do." He's a big production guy. He's now with the Golden State Warriors, a terrific evaluator. And he's right. You start to look at players and you start to ask yourself, what are they going to bring now every game, regardless of how they score, assist, rebound? Do they feel good? Did they just have a great game? Did they just have a bad game? Are they everyday players? You know, what are they going to give the game from a skill standpoint, from a number standpoint, from an effort standpoint? What do they bring to the game? What can we count on seeing when we see that player? And then next is potential. where can we see them playing at the next level? And I'm talking about college right now. If they go to Kentucky or Duke or Boston College, will they be the star? Do they have a chance to be all ACC or all SEC player of the year type? Can they be first team all league? Can they be a starter? If not, when can they be a starter? So we try to look at their upside in the game, if you will.
Yep.
When their college days are done, we try to project whether or not they'll be an NBA draft pick. Not an NBA player, but an NBA draft pick. I think it's impossible to forecast whether or not somebody's going to be a good NBA player. There's so many variables. There's so many factors that we can't even. We don't have time. It's another podcast.
That's the end of our lens is the NBA draft. That's what you're saying.
Yes, by April of their senior year, we finish our rankings, which are coming out next Wednesday, the final ESPN 100. We look at all the performances, their productivity level, what we see as their potential at the next level, and then projection into the NBA draft. Second round pick, first round pick, lottery, high lottery. I mean, there's different variables in the draft. A lot of guys in the ESPN 100 could not get drafted but still make the NBA. So those are the 4 Ps that go into the evaluation process of our rankings.
And I think that it's so important, especially when you're talking about these 3 guys, because if I could kind of simplify that a little bit, what I would just say to people is I said, listen, it's not just about who they are right now, but it's also about what they're going to be, what we think they're going to be in college, and then what we think they're going to be in the NBA draft. So you're trying to consider a few different variables, which again, with these 3 guys, with Cunningham, with Green, with Mobley, I think different guys have the advantage in different areas. So now let's start talking about those different guys. I mean, let's start with Mobley. I think I don't know this for a fact, but I think that if we looked back, he might have been number 1 for the longest period of time. So if you're watching this online, you're going to be able to see some video here, care of YouTube. And this was, I believe, from this year's Hoop Hall. But what about Mobley is so special to you?
Well, Adam, let me back up for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
We also evaluate the character traits. That's huge with us in terms of their productivity level, their potential, and their projection. We look at body language, coachability, work ethic, what type of teammate they are. So we put a lot of value into their traits because the traits, as we all know, the traits can enhance the talent or it can stop the talent. And that's a big factor into these rankings.
No doubt.
When it comes to Mobley, you're right. He's been number 1 since the class rankings as a sophomore. Why? The biggest guy in the class in terms of height, extremely skilled, shot blocker, good rebounder, and great mobility. I love the way he can run the floor when he puts that baby in overdrive.
Right.
And, just so much skill, so much length, so much mobility. And when you look at his character traits, really coachable, a great teammate. People like to be around him. He plays to win. He gets triple doubles at times, and often he gets double doubles. What happens with Mobley is you see him play so much, and I think you expect so much more from him because he's so gifted. And there are times, he has that motor game in neutral, and it needs to be in high gear. And I think, when he pushes from neutral to high gear, I think that's when you see, all his talent, all his giftedness, and as we like to say, potential and projection come about.
There are certainly times I think where you just want a little bit more from him because the natural talent is so off the charts. I mean, they just don't make guys who are 7 feet or close to it who are as fluid as he is. And, in terms of the way he moves and covers the court, he just moves differently for a guy his size. You mentioned the unselfishness. I think he's almost unselfish to a fault. In that, that's what you want to see him dominate a little bit more. But he's almost like the reluctant superstar of high school basketball, where he's got all these gifts. But I think one of the best things about him is that he prioritizes winning, and he is, he's really a nice young man too. I mean, there is more humility there if you've never met him before, there's more humility there than you could possibly imagine. I think, as you talked about the character piece, that speaks to his long-term potential. Any way what do you think realistic freshman expectations are for him, and then a year from now, what do you think is a realistic draft target for him?
Well, if he can go from nice to nasty on the court, that enhances his upside in the game next year at
no doubt.
He's going to play his dad's an assistant coach, and his
brother, yeah,
Isaiah Mobley is still there, and I think he'll stay there. And they'll play together, and they play so well together as 6'9" and as a 7-footer. When you look at Mobley's game, if he can be more assertive and just learn to compete on an everyday basis, that's all he's missing right now, Adam. That strength and balance, but you have a strength and conditioning coach that's going to work with him as soon as he's allowed on campus, and that will fix that problem. For Mobley, it's that every possession, every practice, every game effort, and he's working on it. And don't forget, he's a big man. Big guys don't mentally mature at the rate shorter guys or guards do per se. So he's growing into his body. He's growing into his mind. Some people say he doesn't play hard. I say he's learning how to play hard. He plays hard. It's got to get better. He'll start at USC. Obviously, I think he'll score close to double figures. He can grab 5 or 6 rebounds, and I think he can get up to 2 to 3 blocks per game. And I think that's where he'll really impact the game, is on the defensive end, with rim protection. I think that's where he'll be special. And offensively, he's got a lot of gifts. He can score the ball on his own, or he'll get dribble penetration drop-offs, some second chance opportunities. He's got a sweet little jump shot, but he's really got to get stronger, and he's got to get on balance.
And I think, correct me if you disagree with this. I mean, I think right now he's a very likely top 3 pick a year from now. Would you agree with that?
No question. And I think Cunningham and Jalen Green and Evan Mobley, I think it's up for grabs.
Yeah, I agree.
Number 1 pick is in the NBA draft. They all have so much time. They all have so much to work with, and they'll all get heavily evaluated.
All right. Well, let's stay in the state of California. Jaylen Green, who was the first number 1 ranked player of this class when, as sophomores, when the ESPN 25 came out. Talk to me about what we've seen through his journey in the last 2 or 3 years, because that to me is what really gives him a case to reclaim that, or finish with that top spot that he started with.
Yeah, he went from an NBA athlete to someone who understands now how to score from the outside with the jump shot, with the drive game. He's utilized the jab step. He's become a 2 guard. And that's what I believe he'll be at the next level. He'll be an NBA 2 guard. And when I say NBA athlete, he's an NBA athlete right now.
Yeah.
He and Greg Brown, best 2 athletes in the class of 2020. But for me, the turning point with Jalen Green was this summer. Shot the ball so well from the 3-point line, but didn't fall in love with the 3, didn't settle for the 3, because he is a fantastic finisher who still has a great mid-range game. He's navigating better in pick and rolls, but that 3-point shot at prolific prep this senior season was at 40%.
That's really the key for me, because as you've seen on these clips, I mean, this guy's got explosiveness that you just can't teach. And frankly, I don't think that he's fully grasped all the nuances of how to utilize that yet. I mean, I think when you talk about this guy's athleticism, you've got athleticism that's going to be at the highest level, even by NBA standards. Of course, he's going to the G League, and another one who's widely expected to be a top 3 pick. But what most impressed me is the fact that, as you said, this is a guy who has really transformed his jumper, not just in that he's making more shots now, but even mechanically. I mean, he shoots a good-looking ball right now. And so I think that the arc of a player, their learning curve, I think is so important when you start projecting guys out long-term, as we talked about, trying to figure out what they're going to be in college. Obviously, he's not going to college, but where he's going to be drafted. Well, right now, this guy's got a very good chance to be number 1, because he's got this dynamic athleticism, really good positional size, and he keeps getting better and adding to his skill set. And as I said, the thing that I really like about him, I'm not sure that Jalen Green has any idea like how good he could be. He knows he's good, but I think understanding all those nuances to the game, like little plays like that first step, that's a play where I feel like he could do almost whenever he wants. And as he starts to figure out when to use what tools, I think he's just gonna keep getting better. Anything else you want to add on Jaylen?
Well, you said the word better multiple times, and we talked about how he got improved as a player. Let's not forget, he's got a tremendous work ethic. He's got great work habits. I mean, he is constantly working on his athleticism out on the track out in Fresno. When I keep tabs on him, he's constantly doing something for his body. He's working on a skill level. He puts a lot of unseen hours into the game. So this didn't just happen because he's some freak athlete. Yeah, he's got freak athleticism, but he's worked awfully hard at his skill level and, as you mentioned, the nuances of the game.
The last guy is Kade Cunningham, who was, in my mind, the best player on the best team in high school basketball this year at Montverde Academy. There was talk as to whether this Montverde team was, the best team we've seen in years. Unfortunately, they didn't get a chance to finish the season. But Cade won a number of National Player of the Year awards. He won the Naismith Award, of which we're both voters. What is it that makes Kade Cunningham so special in your mind?
Physical ability. I mean, he's 6'7". He is strong. He's powerful. He's got good speed, and he's got pretty good lateral quickness. You put that with an improved, and you talk about much improved skill level. Kade Cunningham now is considered a shooter from the outside. He's always been good on the pull-up game. He's been great getting into the lane, finishing with strength and body control, where Jaylen Green finished with dynamic athleticism. He runs the point well. He can play off the ball. He's very unselfish. He brings talent and traits at the highest level, and he's a worker. All these guys are workers. He wasn't even in any of the rankings. I had a chance to see him a couple of years ago in October, and I remember telling you and other guys how good he was, and we put him in the rankings. He moved up to number 10, and then he moved up to number 2. He's at number 3 now, and we're shuffling the deck with these guys as we approach the rankings next week. This guy's the ultimate winner.
He was, now this is, I don't want to put your words in your mouth, so I want to make this clear. This is just my opinion, but he, in my mind, was the best player in high school basketball this year.
I agree with that. I agree. He was the best high school player this year.
Yes, exactly. I don't know that his upside, I think, is necessarily as high as everyone's. But I think his floor, in terms of a worst case scenario, is probably higher than anyone's, because his maturity level is off the charts to me. There's been, we've talked to him on air about, he changed his diet, he meditates every day. I mean, this guy is maximizing, I shouldn't say every day, but he's taken up meditation. His floor vision and feel for the game is off the charts. That's why at 6'6", he was essentially a point guard at this level. Let me ask you that question. What do you think is his position long term? Not necessarily at Oklahoma State, but do you think he can be a point guard in the league one day?
I think he can run a team. I don't know if he'll be a starting point guard on the first unit, if that makes sense. He can certainly play off the ball because he understands spacing. He can shoot it. Very good pull-up game. And when he gets into the paint, he can score or find. Adam, we didn't even mention his defensive ability. Outside of Scotty Barnes, I consider Kade Cunningham maybe the second best defender in the high school game. So I think he fits anywhere on the perimeter. I think you can put him with a classic point guard and he can play 2. I think you can put him with a classic point guard, a Jaylen Green, and he can play the 3. He's got size and strength to cover big threes in the NBA. I think he just is a very, very good guard who can play anywhere on the perimeter, and I definitely can see him playing some point. But I don't know if he'll be an exclusive point guard in the NBA.
And what to me would be an interesting hypothetical, if you paired him with a couple of smaller scoring guards, allowed him to be your primary facilitator, your primary decision maker offensively. But then because he's with 2 scoring guards, he can go on the other end and defend, a more conventional wing that might be a better matchup for him. But with the prevalence of undersized scoring guards today, I think when you've got big facilitators like Kade Cunningham, it opens up a lot of different options. And as I said, I just think the world of this kid's habits, his maturity. That's why I think, I don't know what his upside is, but I just feel like he's a can't miss prospect. If he's not a pro for 12 years or more, I would be very, very surprised.
No, I agree with that.
So, all right, we've broken down the top three. We didn't reveal anything. As we said, next Wednesday, the final ESPN 100 will come out. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon. About 30 minutes ago, Greg Brown, another five-star talent, top 10 national prospect, he committed to Texas and Shaka Smart. Let me get your quick first reaction to that pledge for Shaka Smart. This is a guy who the G League was pursuing. There was rumors that he may follow Jalen Green and Isaiah Todd to the G League, but he is not going that route. He's going to play for Shaka Smart. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I mean, you're talking about a massive elite athlete, as we talked about Jalen Green, but Greg Brown now close to 6'9", I believe, at least 6'8".
Yep.
Skill level has gotten tremendously better in terms of shooting it and putting it on the deck for a couple of dribbles, straight line driver, jump shooter. I mean, this kid's a pogo stick.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Texas, it's huge. For Shaka Smart, I mean, he's an Austin kid. His dad went to Texas. I believe his mom went there too, but his dad played football at Texas. So, I got two Longhorns in the house, so they were rooting for Texas. The G League tried. I don't think the G League had enough resources. They gave the number one set of resources to Jaylen Green. They gave the second set of resources to Isaiah Todd. And so for Greg Brown, I think, going to Texas, great choice, stay at home, build a legacy there. And boy, oh boy, you look at Shaka Smart's roster next year with most everybody coming back, and you add Greg Brown to the mix. Next year could be a very strong year in Austin for basketball.
And put him next to Kai Jones, who's a guy with huge upside, who made significant strides this year. I mean, that's going to be one of the more fun front court duos to watch, not just in the Big 12, but anywhere in the country.
Yeah, they got Will Baker and Jericho Sims as well, because I don't think anybody's on that Texas roster has declared for the NBA draft, have they?
That's amazing front court depth. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how they're going to. I mean, you would have to think you're going to have three of them on the floor together at one time, but that is a good problem to have for Shaka Smart. Last question before I let you go here, because I know you've got other commitments today. Second half of the season, at least as much of it as we had before the stuff that we missed. Who was someone who could maybe be who stood out to you, who made an impression, might be on the verge of a jump in this last updated ESPN 100?
Well, Adam, in February, we were both at the Metro Classic, and I thought Andre Curbelo was fantastic. I mean, he played two major games, and he controlled the action from tip to finish with his scoring, playmaking, ball handling. I mean, for a guy who handles the ball 99% of the time for Lehigh, I mean, he doesn't turn it over much at all. His assist to turnover ratio is off the charts. He knows when his team needs him to score. He understands how to give out the assist. He plays solid defense. He's a great teammate. He's an energy giver in so many ways. He's a mature kid, as we know, off the court. But on the court, he plays with great maturity, great toughness. And when they beat Sierra Canyon, Lehigh, they have a really good team. I mean, Zed Key, I love Zed Key. He looks like a miniature Jared Sullinger to me.
Yeah.
And the young kid, is it Raphael Pinson?
Yeah, the junior. Yep, big junior, multi-positional guy on the perimeter. Yep, absolutely.
He played very well. But Andre Curbelo took that game and put it in his hands, and he made Lehigh win against Sierra Canyon with all that talent and all the hype. And they are that good in terms of talent, Sierra Canyon, one of two or three most talented teams in the country. That game put the stamp on Andre Curbelo for me. I always liked him, and I know you did too, but I thought he took his game to another level that weekend at the Metro Classic.
And, of course, he's headed to Illinois next year, continuing that pipeline from New York City to Brad Underwood's program. The thing about Curbelo is just one of the most charismatic kids and leaders you're going to find in this national class. And he's also got elite floor vision and passing. So when you combine that personality with his ability to deliver balls. I just think he, to your point, because I know you are a huge fan of him. Just makes guys around him better, and that's going to be a lot of fun for Illinois fans next year. Yeah,
and the coaching staff at Long Island Lutheran did a really good job. Coach Buck and Coach David. I mean, they did a great job in grooming him over time. And you look at where he went. You mentioned Illinois, Orlando, Antigua. That relationships, right? They both Puerto Rican descent, and that was huge. And that just shows you how important it is to have good relationships in recruiting, because here's a kid in New York. Big East is there, the ACC, and the Big Ten got him.
Absolutely. He'll be one to watch in the Big Ten next year. Coach, thanks so much for doing this. We will have these updated rankings be live on the ESPN.com site next Wednesday. We're looking forward to it, and thanks so much for joining. This is the first episode of the Video Upside podcast, so I appreciate you doing this with me.
You're a trendsetter. What can I say in the podcast game? It's Woj and then you. And thanks to Ack there behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Ackernack is the one who makes the engine run for us. So thank you very much, and look forward to being back with the Upside podcast with another guest next week. So until then, thank you and stay safe, everybody.